Welcome, everybody. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. And then we'll start with the prayers. Okay. I hope you're all well. And I'm sure that a lot of you did attend the Saturday in-person seminar. I'm not sure how many of those who attended Saturday are on the class today, but there may be a lot of others who did not attend on Saturday, but maybe in the class today. So the topic today will cover a lot of the material that I discussed on Saturday. And for those who have already heard it, I hope the repetition will just strengthen your understanding of the topics and not you may not find it difficult to sort of think that this is a repetition, but I'm sure that we'll be taking a different angle, so it shouldn't be difficult. Let's start with the prayers. Namo Orientanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Uvajjayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pavapanasano, Manglanancha Sabve Simpadmam Havai Mangalam. Veera Sarvasura Surendra Mahito Virmuda Sansrita Virena Bhyata Swakarmani Chayo Viraya Nityam Nama Vira Tirthamidam Pravrutamatulam Vira Shaghoram Tapo Vire Sri Dhruti Kirtikanti Nichaya Sri Virabhadram Disa Anguthe Amrutavase Laptitana Bhandar Sri Guru Gautam Samariye Manavanchita Fadadata. I won't repeat this, but I'll leave the slide on for a minute. You all know what we are trying to do with these classes. Okay. Now, the topic that we started on Saturday in the in-person seminar was the 12 contemplations or 12 bhavnas. They're also called anupreksha. We'll come to this in detail as to the purpose of the bhavnas a bit later in the class today. But basically, the bhavnas are teaching us how to direct our thoughts to something which is more knowledgeable, more productive towards the betterment of the soul. And in the long run, those bhavnas prepare us for spiritual progress. And depending on how well and how intensely we learn the bhavnas and apply them to our daily conscious and subconscious mind awareness, everything that keeps on going through our minds, and how we evaluate and react to situations. If the bhavanas are applied well, then they are a key to actually having a much more spiritual life, and they have the ability to transform our level of happiness, our level of readiness for progress, and overall, they can help us actually control difficult situations where we are struggling, and may, if we are not applying the knowledge of these bhavanas, actually end up in harming others as well as ourselves. The subject matters of one's meditation and how to occupy one's mind with useful, religious, beneficial, peaceful, harmless, spiritually advancing, karma preventing thoughts. That is what the 12 bhavanas are. So in many ways, this is very practical Jainism. And as we have learned in the previous classes, the whole business about dharma is to reduce the acquisition of karmas that are already will continuously produce difficulties and problems for us now and in the future, to reduce the burden of karmas so that the soul ultimately progresses towards moksha, where it is completely free of any attachment to karmas and therefore any attachment to the body. They cover a wide field of teachings of Jainism. They are designed to serve as aids to spiritual progress, produce detachment, and lead the aspirants from the realm of desire to the path of renunciation. They are reflections upon the fundamental facts of life, intended to develop purity of thought and sincerity in practice of religion. And there is a very important question asked on Saturday, was that how do we do all this? And Mehul Bhai Sangrajka gave a very good answer, that like you don't start running a marathon without practicing over a period of time. Similarly, getting deeper into this level of spirituality and applying the 12 bhavanas properly requires gradual practice and an understanding of dharma, which then, as we keep on practicing, we slowly get better. Anupreksha is the other word used for bhavanas, and it also means self-examination, examination of the soul, and contemplation and reflection on our state. So a lot of it is trying to understand what is going on within our minds, within our soul, and what every stage in life that we experience and how we react to it tells us about where we are spiritually and what is the likely progress or descent in terms of the soul's emancipation. Now, there is a huge amount of literature on this. This is the 12 bhavanas, and in addition to that, the 4 bhavanas, Maitri, Pramod, Karuna, and Madhyasth bhavana, the 4 bhavanas that you all know, the song of Maitri Bhavanam Pavitra Saranu, that describes the other 4 bhavanas. Those are the more positive bhavanas. These are the bhavanas about reflections. All of those are described in great detail in Sant Sudaras, which was written by Upadhyay Vinay Vijayji in the 17th century. He was around that time. You may also have heard about him with respect to Sripal Rajano Ras, that is recited every year during Abel, twice a year. Then there was Yog Sastra written by Kalikal Suragna Hemchandracharya around the 12th century. He was the guru of Kumarpal. Raja Kumarpal was one of the greatest kings of Gujarat, and a lot of the state of the current wellness in Gujarat that you might have observed over the years, a lot of the roots of that were sown by Kumarpal Maharaja and Hemchatracharya. And much earlier than that, we got Barsa Anuvekha by the Digambar Acharya, Sri Kunkund Acharya, around 2nd century CE. There is a lot of other literature available in Gujarati, and you'll find a lot of material on the 12 Bhavanas on the internet as well. We started off on Saturday with discussing these first 6 Bhavanas. Anitya Bhavana, which talks about the impermanence of the world. Asharana Bhavana is talking about how we are completely unprotected, in the sense that if we rely on somebody, we say that I have somebody's protection. So, for example, here we may say that we are legally protected from certain things because we have the safety, but none of these protections work absolutely. And there are always situations where whatever we have relied on to make sure that our safety in all respects is maintained, ultimately there are no guarantees. Sansar Bhavana is about how the soul moves from one life to other, and what sort of pain and tribulations it has gone through in all the different forms of life that the soul has been through. That is the contemplation on Sansar Bhavana. Ekatva Bhavana is about the solitude of the soul. The soul comes alone to this world, departs alone, relationships change, and in many respects, this is a contemplation of the understanding that we are in all important aspects alone with ourselves. Anyatva Bhavana is we are separate from all the material and the relationship things that we get attached to in this life. And even though we are separate from that, and we know that none of that is going to accompany us after death, we still get very much tied down with all the material and the attachments that we have. Asuchi Bhavana is talking about the nature of our bodies and how it is not in itself in a pure state. So those of you, apart from the normal excretory functions that we all have, if any one of you have looked at pictures or seen any surgery done, the internal workings of the human body are also not generally a pretty sight, but one may think that they're beautiful because of the function and the complexity and the sureness with which it all works. But again, that is for a short while. And when that is outside the body, it all becomes pretty grim and pretty smelly. Some of the things that we are going to start discussing today are the rest of the 6 bhavanas. Ashrav bhavana is the understanding and the contemplation on the influx of karma. We talked about these concepts when we were talking about karma. Samvar bhavana is about the stoppage of the influx of karma. Nijara bhavana is the shedding of karma. Lok bhavana is a contemplation on the nature of the universe and how it is changing, but also on a wider scale about how vast the universe is and what our place in it is. Bodhi Durlabh Bhavana is the great difficulty in attaining the state of the right faith, right knowledge, and right conduct of the Bodhi Durlabh, meaning the attainment of Samyaktva, when the soul realizes its true nature and realizes the elements that are beneficial to it and the elements that are not. And that step in the progress of the soul is the most difficult to achieve, and it is also the most important step for the soul, because as soon as one achieves samyaktva or samyak darshan or bodhi, bodhi is another term for samyaktva or samyak darshan, as soon as one achieves that, even for a very short while, and loses it afterwards, but that one step of having achieved samyaktva guarantees that that soul's future journey towards moksha is extremely significantly shortened. We'll come to how it is shortened and by how much later on during these classes, but I won't bore you with using terms that we need another 10-15 minutes to explain just now, but suffice it to say that Bodhi Durlabh Bhavana is about how difficult it is to achieve this step and to understand how one can actually progress towards that. And the last is Dharma Bhavana, is understanding the nature of the religion and what elements would actually help the soul progress. So we'll discuss the other 6 bhavanas, but we'll refer to the first 6 as well as we go along on this journey of 12 bhavanas. So Anitya Bhavana, if those of you who heard a lot of this last on Saturday, 3-4 days ago, if there are any questions, just please put them on the chat and we'll tackle them at the end of the class. Anitya Bhavana is understanding the nature of what surrounds us and what is also the real state of our being. Everything that we understand as being permanent is in reality, all that we get attached to is in reality very temporary. So for example, this life, if you're lucky, we may have a lifespan of 100, 110 years. So lifespan is limited. Our Shastra says the lifespans vary depending on when or on where you are born. If you are in Devlok or if you are in Narak, then the lifespans there are very different. The minimum lifespans there are 10,000 years, but the maximum lifespan there is extremely long. And for an innumerable number of years, meaning asankhya verse. But in this kind of life, the bodies that we have, not only is life temporary or limited, our health too is temporary. So we may not always enjoy good health. But as we get older, the nature of the body is to slowly become frail, slowly lose all its strength, slowly lose functions. So again, health and youth are temporary. We all know that we may feel very happy for a while, everything may be going well, and that may last for a long time for some very lucky people, but none of that state of happiness that we may experience lasts forever. So something or the other does disturb our state of happiness, because something else that may worry us comes along. Our relationships with people may last a lifetime, but after the lifetime ends, those relationships would definitely end. We may be lucky if we meet the same people again in future lives, but the nature of our relationship with them in the future may be very different. It all depends on how we have lived through that relationship in this life or in previous lives, and how we may, if we do ever come across the same people again and again, the nature of our relationship may change. So that is about anitya bhavana. And in contemplating about the temporary nature of all these things that we just talked about, we could need also to reflect on what is permanent. So the soul, as we discussed right at the beginning, is nitya, meaning it was never born and it will never die. And the soul has always existed. So that is permanent. The virtues of the soul, which are currently hidden by karmas, once they are exposed and once we have got rid of all the karmas, the state of moksha is permanent, and the virtues of the soul in that state are permanent. So understanding what is permanent and what is ours is also a subject of the anitya bhavana. So all this is temporary, but all that which is within me, beyond my body, beyond my mind, beyond everything else, and that which I carry, which I am from life after life, is what is permanent. And I need to understand what that is and to try and reach that state. So the lesson really here is not to get too attached to what is temporary. Now, there was a very nice story that was recited about this, and I'll just give a reference to that story, and maybe if people want to hear it again, we can repeat it in some other future class. But just remember, the story that is often cited in illustration of this bhavana is about Anathi Muni, who was one of the inspirations for King Shrenik, who lived around the time of Bhagwan Mahavir. And is a very beautiful story about why Anathi Muni, who he was and how he actually became a monk, and why his name as Anathi is how he is described. So just remember that, and maybe we'll recite the story again for those who have not heard about it. Asharan Bhavana. This contemplation is about it. We may feel very safe and protected from everything that we built around us, or we've been lucky to have built around us. So children feel confident, comfortable in the knowledge that their parents are around, that they've got a family around them. But we know of many children around the world who do not have that. We know of many children who do not have that security of the parents. Parents may not be around because they may have died. There are families where there is only one parent. There are families where children are growing up with broken relationships. So for those people, the sense of being a Sharan, meaning that there is nobody that they can rely on or they can hope to be looked after, is very, very prominent. Most of us have probably been very lucky and never had to worry about that kind of a situation. In this country, we have some protection from the law, as I mentioned before. So we may think that we have refuge in the law or we have refuge in the government, that they will protect us. But we've all heard stories where that in itself doesn't go right all the time. But where we are all without any protection is there is no absolute guarantee of disease-free lifespan. So sooner or later, the end to this life is coming. So there, again, we have no protection. We've got a great NHS, but as you all know, that doesn't always work. And you heard stories after stories over the last several months where things have broken down and people have had to suffer. And just a couple of weeks ago, waiting for 90 minutes, if you got a heart attack, which was never happening before since the reforms were put in place, has already been the norm recently. Talked about old age as well. So Anitya Bhavana and Ashran Bhavana, Anathi Muni. So we discussed that what we suffer from and the limitations to the powers of the soul that are exhibited or we are aware of are due to the accumulation of karmas that we have done over life after life. And as the karmas unfold and come to fruition, the effects of that are felt by us. So the ultimate protection from all these ups and downs of life can only be provided by those who can help us get rid of the karmas. And the real Sharan, therefore, that we can take refuge in are the Aryans, Siddh, Sadhu, and Dharma. So those of you who have heard of the Mangalacharan that we recite, Arihanta Mangalam, Siddha Mangalam, Sahu Mangalam, Kevali Pannatto Dhammo Mangalam, Arihanta Loguttama, Siddha Loguttama, Sahu Loguttama, Kevali Pannatto Dhammo Loguttamo, Arihante Sharanam Pavajami, Siddhe Sharanam Pavajami, Sahu Sharanam Pavajami, Kevali Pannattam Dhammam Sharanam Pavajami. The last verse talks about that it's only in these four that every soul has complete protection and safety forever. So therefore accept that Sharan. Again, that's the contemplation on the Asharan Bhavana. Sansar Bhavana is about the nature of our journeys from life after life. Jain Dharma says that the soul has been to every inch or minuscule space millimeter of the universe and has touched it many, many times in different life forms. So there is no place in the universe where this soul hasn't been. And there is probably no life species that we've not actually lived a life in. We've been moving from Tiryanch, Narak, Devlok, and Manushya, from life after life. And in Tiryanch, we've been one sense, two sense, three sense, four sense, five sense, with a mind, without a mind. And we've probably all been human beings many times before. But because we've not understood the true nature of ourselves and have not made an effort to progress, we are still where we are. But the fact that we are here and have the good fortune to be exposed to spirituality and have an interest in learning about it and are all making effort to actually put it into practice, those are some of the rarest things for the soul in its journey through the universe. So in many ways, a lot of us who are part of this journey together or are engaging in all kinds of education about spirituality have actually moved pretty far down or pretty far up the pathway towards improvement of the soul. On Saturday, I talked about this particular story, and I'll go into a bit more detail about it today. And I think this story in itself could occupy us for 20, 30 weeks or longer. I've taken a class on this previously called Samraditya Kevali Charitra, this particular story, over about 12 plus weeks, 1 day a week for over 2 hours. But there is a lot within this story, and let me just recite it again. My apologies to those who just heard it 3 days ago. The story is about two souls who meet as people in a kingdom long time ago. One of the characters in this story, one of the two characters, this story is about two people who, and it describes their association or 9 human lives. But in between each human life, they have another life and probably many other lives in between for the one who is on a descending path, where they spend a lot of time in other yonis, but a lot of time spent in Narak as well for the one who was descending. But this talks about the 9 lives that are human and when they are associated with each other. And it describes how that came about and what we can learn about the nature of our journeys, our relationships, etc. So, long time ago in a kingdom, there was a prince called Gun Sen. He had lots of friends of similar age. They were probably all around their teen years, very enthusiastic, energetic, mischievous, and always looking for fun and uh, using their position. So leader of that group was Gun Sen, who was a prince, and his friends, one of them was the son of one very prominent merchant, and another one was probably the son of one of the ministers, and they were all privileged. And whenever they had a bit of spare time from whatever they were doing, they would roam around the city and find something to entertain themselves. And once they came across this particular person called Agni Sharma, who by birth was quite different and peculiar in the way he looked. So the way it's described is that he had a very big head, very thin limbs, and he looked quite striking with very big eyes, and he didn't fit in with the norm of what people would expect children or teenagers to look like. So because of his appearance, which was quite unusual and probably appeared quite uh, funny, he was being bullied. So as we know, in schools, a lot of children get bullied because of these kinds of things even these days. So if you got a disability or if you look different, people do get bullied. And I'm sure we all know of stories, and some of us may have experienced this ourselves. So they come across Agni Sharma, who is the victim, and Gun Sen and his friends set upon him and on a daily basis torment him by making fun of him, because they were privileged, they were stronger, they appeared normal to other people, and Agni Sharma appeared very different. They made fun of him, they did all kinds of things, they held him captive for a while and punished him in all different kinds of ways. And it goes on for a long time until a time comes when Agni Sharma gets really fed up. He seeks help from his parents, and his father tries but has become powerless because he is fighting against the powerful king's son, and he finds it very difficult to help his son. Ultimately, Agni Sharma decides that there's no point in living in this town and suffering the torture on a daily basis. So he leaves the city, and on his once he's outside the city, he comes across a small ashram where there are lots of tapas who are living there and looking after themselves. They have a kind of an orchard and they feed themselves on fruit or on alms from other villages around that ashram. And Agni Sharma goes to them, and he knows that it's a very peaceful place and he can see that. And he asks the head tapas whether he can join them and stay with them. And he tells them the reason why he has run away from home and why he wants to spend his time with them, because he finds it very peaceful. And the head tapas accepts him, and he stays there. Here in this place, nobody is bullying him, nobody is judging him by his looks, and he gradually gets into the activities of the tapas ashram, and gradually he becomes very proficient in penance in tap, and he becomes a very well-renowned tapas. Everybody around in the towns from where this ashram was have heard that this Agni Sharma, he's just known as a tapas. His name is no longer familiar. His appearance has changed because he had taken a vow that he would fast for a month. And at the end of the month, he would go out and seek some food from just one household. And if he got the food from that household, he would break his fast and then fast again for another month. And he had been carrying on this activity for a long time, and he'd become so ascetic himself and so spiritual that everybody came to see him and worship him. King Gunsen, the Prince Gunsen, has now become a king. His father has gone. And now King Gunsen also hears about Agni Sharma, this particular tapas. He doesn't know it's Agni Sharma, and he decides to go and visit him. And one day he goes there and bows down to him and says, I've heard so much about your great penance, your great tap, and I've come here to pay my respects to you. But you look quite young. You've been practicing such severe penance, fasting for a whole month for a long time. What is the inspiration behind and the strength behind what you have been doing? And Agni Sharma says, well, I owe this all to a prince called Gunsen. And Gunsen, just suddenly that jolts his memory that is this the same person that I was torturing? And he has been repentant about what he had been doing once he became a bit more sensible and he became older. And he's been often thinking about this. And now that he is meeting that person face to face, he feels extremely sorry, asks for his forgiveness, and says, I'm really sorry, repentant of all that torture that we gave you, and please forgive me. And I'm really glad that you have reached there and you've forgotten that. Agni Sharma has become very generous. He says, I hold no ill will towards Gunsen. Gunsen says, I'm that person and I'm really sorry. But to ease my burden of guilt, will you do me a favor? And when you break your fast next month, will you come to my palace to break your fast? And Agni Sharma says, okay, I will come. The day he's breaking his fast, he goes to the palace, stands out there, waiting for somebody to notice that he's out there and to bring some food for him. On this particular day, the king in his palace has had a severe headache. And he is so disturbed by it, and the whole retinue of his servants and his wives and queens and everybody is so engaged with trying to find a solution to his headache that nobody notices that Agni Sharma, a tapas, is waiting outside. Agni Sharma waits for a while, nobody comes out, and he goes back and takes a vow for a fast for another month. Soon after he is left, after a while, Gunsen's headache slowly subsides, and then he suddenly realizes that Agni Sharma was breaking his fast today, and he was going to come to his palace. And he goes out and asks his servants whether there was somebody, and they said, yes, there was somebody who was waiting outside, but everybody was so rushed about with this that nobody paid attention to him, and he went away. So Gunsen then rushes back to the ashram, meets Agni Sharma, bows down to him, and with tears in his eyes asks for his forgiveness and says, I'm really, really sorry that this has happened. Please promise me that you will come to break your fast when this month ends. And Agni Sharma is still forgiving, and he agrees and says, oh, no problem. It's given me the opportunity to fast for another month. I hold no ill will towards you. And he goes and agrees to go to Gunsen's palace. The month ends, he goes back to the palace, and unfortunately, as this was destined to happen this way, Gunsen's chief queen has given birth to a son. Exactly on that day, and everybody is rushing around, celebrating, congratulating each other, and nobody pays attention to this ascetic tapas waiting outside the palace looking for food. He goes back, Gunsen realizes, and again, very repentant, goes back. Now, we may feel that these things are unusual, that they are once in a lifetime kind of an event, but those kinds of things have happened. We've heard stories of all these kinds of things which are extremely unusual, but this happens. The king forgets and he goes back, asks for forgiveness. Agni Sharma forgives him and agrees that he will come back at the third month. The third month ends, Agni Sharma goes back to the palace, and this day the neighboring king has attacked this kingdom, and the king and his generals and his whole army is very, very busy preparing for a counterattack and getting the armies ready to depart to the border to fight this invading king. This crisis gets over as well for the king, and he then realizes that he has missed the end of the fast for Agni Sharma. And he goes back, asks for forgiveness, but by this time, Agni Sharma has really lost his cool. He becomes extremely angry. He goes back to his ashram. He confronts, he talks to his guru, and he says that if my penance, if all that good that I've done with this tap over the last few months, years, has the power, let me be the cause of death of this Gunsen, because he's tortured me throughout my life as a young person, as a boy, and even in my adulthood, having found peace and solace in this place, he has hounded me. He has come here, and month after month, he's forgotten that he has promised to help me break my fast, and he has ignored it. And he knows really well what my vow is. And he has been doing this deliberately, and I curse him, and I vow that I will be the death of him in every life after this, and in this life. And this particular incident then very severely transforms Gunsen. Agni Sharma, obviously, at the end of 3-month fast, and then he vows that I'm not going to eat anymore. I'm going to end my life with fasting to death. And he does that. And he dies and becomes a dev, as a yaksh in a different yoni because of all the penance and the fasting that he had done. But he doesn't forget his vow and his hatred for Gunsen. Gunsen, meanwhile, is become very, very repentant, very, very self-aware, very reclusive, and he starts a spiritual journey, and he realizes the nature of sansar, and he starts progressing. He is constantly trying to repent for the bad deeds that he did in his life, particularly this one with Agni Sharma. And he carries on towards the end of his life, the last few years, he becomes a monk. And in this particular life, Agni Sharma's life, which has now become a dev, comes down and causes his death of King Gunsen. And then life after life, they meet. The second life is Singh Kumar, where they are Singh Kumar and Anand, where they are father and son. They are bound, even though they have a relationship as father and son, they are bound by hatred. The father, who is Gun Sen, and the son, who is Anand, are joined in a relationship by birth, but the father is benevolent and has complete fatherly love for his child, but the child just hates the father, and ultimately he becomes the death of his father. In the next life, is Sikhi Kumar and Jalini, son and mother. Third life, Dhan and Dhanshri, husband and wife. Fifth, human life you're talking about. The lives in between we're not talking about. Jai and Vijay, brothers. Sixth life again, Taran and Lakshmi, husband and wife. Seventh life, Sen and Vishen, again brothers. And in the eighth life, though they are not born in a relationship, they are brought together. Gun Chandra is a king, Vishen is another person, and they are brought together by fate. And in the ninth life, the last life for Gun Sen, who was the virtuous one after that one particular incident in the first life, gets born as Samraditya, and Agni Sharma, the victim of the bully and the one who had really suffered, but he had lost everything because he made a trade. He took a vow of being the death, and his cycle was constantly in descent. So he ends the life as a human being, goes to Narak, ends the life as a human being, goes to Narak, or becomes a Dev, and cannot just get rid of his anger and his hatred. And most of the time, he doesn't know why he is so full of hatred for this one particular person. And this is the relationship. Sansar is actually how we come together with people, and what the seeds of hatred and love that we may sow in this life, those will come to fruition and bring us together in all kinds of relationship, which may be loving or not. But one of the things that we really need to learn about this, that in sansar, if we understand this, then our efforts should be to ensure that in our relationship with all those around us, we do not bind our dislikes and hatred to a level or to a frenzy where they become so negative that we end up accumulating huge amounts of karmas and huge amount of negative attachment to these people. And a lot of this can go on within households. There are rivalries between brothers, there are rivalries between husband and wife, there are rivalries between sisters, there are often rivalries between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. And all these relationships, if we do not understand and apply the benevolence that will take us out of this cycle, do have the power to then reinforce this negativity and bring us closer together, but in a very, very negative and disturbing relationship. This particular story teaches about that. There is also a similar story about Bhagwan Parshanath and Kamat Tapas, and over a period of 10 lives. So their relationship. And if you look at the loving relationships, there are examples of Nal and Damayanti. A lot of you may have heard about it. Nal and Damayanti is a great poem that was written, but according to Jain literature, which describes several of their lives in the past, they had a very loving relationship. Similarly, Bhagwan Nemnath, our 22nd Tirthankar, and Rajul, who he was to wed but comes away from the wedding venue and becomes a monk afterwards. So Neem and Rajul had a very loving, joined up relationship for many lives. So these are the positive and the good examples. And these two, Samraditya Kevli Charitra and the association between Parshnath Bhagwan and Kamat over many lives is what the negativity, and in both those instances, the negativity was generated by just one person, but it is what brought them down over many, many lives. So in this last life, as Samraditya, the king Samraditya ultimately becomes a monk, and through his penance, he achieves a state where he is about to achieve Keval Gnan, get rid of all his bad karmas. And at that time, this person called Girish Sen comes along. He sees this Samraditya and suddenly is filled with hate and says that this is a bad person and he wants to do something to harm him. So he just gets it into his head to start burning him. And he puts this monk is in meditation. He is unaware of everything that's going on around him. And even if he can see what this person is doing, he bears no ill will towards him. He is completely engrossed in his dhyan, in his meditation, and is completely ignoring any discomfort and pain. But this person, Giri Sen, sets a fire around him, and Samraditya's body begins to feel the heat. But within that time, because he's progressing spiritually so high that he gets rid of all his Gati karma and achieves Keval Gnan. And when that happens, the Devs recognize that this has been going on and they come and put out the fire. And then they create a platform for Samraditya to sit down and celebrate this particular event of him achieving Keval Gnan. And Samraditya then sits on this platform and people gather around, and those who have witnessed that this person, Giri Sen, was trying to burn this monk alive, sit down and ask him this question. What is it that this person was thinking, and how come he actually ended up burning you? Then Samraditya Kevali, because that is the name of the story, Samraditya Kevali Charitra, because now he's got Keval Gnan. Samraditya and Keval Gnan in English is omniscience, total knowledge of everything, past, present, and future. Samraditya recites their association over this previous life. So this is the source of that story. And this story was first depicted by Haribhadra Suriswarji Maharaj about, I think, around the 8th century or about 800 years ago, I'm not sure. And the text is called Sama Ichi Kaha. Haribhadra Suriswarji was one of the great Jain scholars, and he was a great acharya, and there is a lot of literature written by him that is the basis of other treatises since then. So this particular book by him, this sutra, yes, this sastra is Sama Ichi Kaha, Samraditya Kevli Charitra. That is about Sansar Bhavana, about the nature of our lives and the nature of our journeys from one life to another. One is always alone in the journey from one life to another, that is Ekatva Bhavana. Anyatva Bhavana, the soul is separate from all material things, including the body. Cultivate detachment from all that is not you. Asuchi Bhavana, again, we talked about it in the beginning. All the unclean stuff that we have got accumulated in our body tells us that we should not be too proud and too attached to our body, because in itself, it's not necessarily all beautiful. Now we're going to just very briefly touch on Ashra of Samvara and Nirjara, and then start with more detail on that. So there's just one slide on that. I'll just briefly explain the meaning of Ashra, Samvar, and Nirjara. And then over the next few weeks, we'll talk about Lok Bhavana, Bodhidurlabh Bhavana, and Dharma Bhavana. And next week, I'll share with you the program over the next few weeks, because there's some time in between that I'm away, and we'll decide how we want to carry on with the classes at that time. And I'll discuss with Sandeepa as well. We talked about this term Ashrav, Samvar, and Nirjara when we're talking about karma, the laws of karma. Ashrav is the influx of karma. The way it's described, and it's very beautifully done, is that if we are a boat floating in an ocean, what is likely to sink the boat? If it develops a leak and small amount of water keeps on coming inside the boat, then very soon the boat will fill up with water and it will sink to the bottom of the sea. So the metaphor is that we are all floating in this ocean of sansar from one place to another, and we are subject to the vagaries of the sea and all the problems that that journey entails. And the only thing that can save us is if the boat remains floating and is guided by somebody who knows the ocean well. So the guiding entities are Aryan, Siddh, Sadhu, and Dharma. But if we leave a leak open and we don't block it, then water will gradually come in. And no matter how hard we try to empty it, sooner or later, it will be overtaken and the boat will sink. So Ashrav is about leaving the doors for water to, leaving a hole open for the water to come in. It's like if you're living in a house and you open all the windows and doors, then dust is going to keep on coming. So Ashrav are all the things that we do as a soul, the engagement that we have with our mind, our speech, our body, and the ways in which we use them. As we discussed, that the causes of the bondage of karma is what goes on in our mind, what we speak, and what we do. But it also depends on what our emotions are, how much krodh, man, maya, lobh we have, anger, greed, pride, and deceit, and all the other negative things that affect the soul, wrong belief. So these are the reasons for accumulation of karma. And if you leave all these different doors open without any heed to what sort of karmas we are actually binding, then we have left the doors that is called ashrav open, and we continue to accumulate karmas. Now, if our activities are good and we are careful, then we will accumulate punya karma, good karma, but ultimately that too is karma, because the soul would not go to moksha until it has got rid of all its karmas, good and bad. Samvar talks about how we can block that leak, how we can plug that leak in the boat So, or how we close the doors and the windows of the house so that no bad karmas or even good karmas come in. So again, that is about purifying the soul, following the path of an ascetic. So the Panch Mahavrat, that ascetics, uh, the vows that they live by. 5 Samitis and 3 Guptis. Samitis are about how careful you are in your activities so that you do the least possible harm to all other living beings. And Trangupti is how you control your mind, your speech, and your body, how you control your senses, and how you calm your mind down so that you are not reacting with negative rag, dvesh, with attachment, with hatred, with anger, with greed. So all those things you are blocking from attracting bad karmas, and you are gradually or attracting karmas, and you are gradually helping get rid of your accumulated karmas, and that is nirjara. Nirjara happens by itself. When the karma comes to fruition, it shows its effect and it wears off. So that is called akam nirjara. That is the shedding of karmas. Sakam nirjara is when you make an effort, and sakam nirjara happens when, as I described earlier, under samvar, you have a positive view, you are benevolent, you are kind, you are careful of not harming other living beings, and all those things that would ensure that you have the respect of, you have respect for all other life forms, you have the respect of what is right, and you have an understanding of your true nature. All that would help in getting rid of the karmas and blocking karmas as well. And gradually that is the path towards moksha. So ashrav is about influx of karma. Samvar is about the blockage of karmas coming and getting attached to the soul. And nirjara is getting rid of the accumulated karma. Now under nirjara, we would discuss the 12 different types of tap, penance. Now, the penance which is visible to others outside is called Baya tap, and there are 6 types of that. And all of us know about the commonest that we have heard during Paryushan. We talk about Upvas, Ketla Kaira. Upvas is a kind of tap. Limiting the number of times you eat is also a kind of tap. Ansan Unu Oriya Ritti Sankhevanam Rasa Chao. You limit the number of foods that you eat, you limit the taste that you eat, all those things about our intake of food and limitations on that is tap of one kind. The more powerful tap, however, and where the Baya tap is designed to help us achieve the more powerful state, is Abhyantar tap. Abhyantar tap is what helps purify our soul, and there comes Prayaschit, Swadhyay, that is what we are doing now, studying religious texts, learning new things from the spiritual perspective. Kayotsarg, meaning Kausag, that we undertake during all the religious activities like Samaik, Pratikraman, Chaityavandan, and Dhyan. Out of all these different types of tap, the most powerful and in getting rid of the karmas is dhyan. And again, the best way of dhyan comes with practice, and that is how we would learn. So we'll come into more details about that. And what are we really reflecting on with the 12 bhavanas? We're really reflecting on the true nature of the soul and the nature of our relationship with the world around us, and how best to react to our temporary relationships and temporary situations in the best interests of the soul. And we cannot do that until we really understand the true nature of the soul and its connection with karma. I'll end there. If I've said anything that is against the principles of that have been taught by our great Tirthankars, I'm sorry. Michhami dukdam. Manvachan kayati tasmichhami dukdam. Thank you, and we'll open for any questions. Meera, Kavit?
Ajit Pai, I have not been sent any questions today.
Okay. Kavit?
I have a question from Bijal Shah. There's two questions. The first question is the Bursa you mentioned same as the Bursa recited during Paryushan?
Sorry, which Barsha are you talking about?
I think this was at the start when...
The verse.
Yeah. The Bursa, B-A-A-R-S-A, Bursa. Barsa?
Barsa Sutra.
Yeah.
Yeah, Barsa Sutra is, no, I didn't mention, I mentioned Sant Sudaras. I mentioned the text in which the Bar Bhavanas are, the Sant Sudaras and Yog Sastra, and the third one by Kunkundacharya. So Barsa Sutra is what is recited during Paryushan. That is the life of Bhagwan Mahavir and the 23 other Tirthankars in brief. And it is about the conduct of Munis. So Barsa Sutra and Kalp Sutra are all what are recited during Paryushan. So what I was quoting or what I was talking about was a different. But if you are asking about the prayer, is a stuti for Bhagwan Mahavir, and that is recited during Paryushan. It is part of the Saklarth Chaityavandan that we recite during the Pratikraman on the Chaudas and on the Savansari and the Chomasi Chaudas. So that particular Chaityavandan is said. So that is Veera Sarvasura Surendra Mahitu Veeramuda Sansrita. That is the prayer, if you're asking about that.
Okay. The next question from Bijal again was in reference to the fire being put out by the devs for the summer.
Yeah.
Do devs know about all Kevalis? And is it the duty of the devta to help the Manushya, or is it a choice?
It's a choice. They may know, but they may not always come down to celebrate. They may, but the power of those that particular event for a soul, I mean, the greatest events in our journey is one is Samyaktva, and for the individual soul, that is probably the most important step. And it is like, I mean, becoming a human being is like a lottery, which impossible odds, and much greater than that impossible odd is reaching a state of samyaktva, and that is like the lottery in once in the soul's infinite journey. But Keval Gnan is obviously the biggest lottery. That is the end of your sansar, end of all your pains. And that in itself generates a huge amount of positivity around. So devs would know. There are devs who may be looking over and exploring the great people. So you may hear in Ramayana and Mahabharata about the devs coming down and helping Ram and other people. Devs are in attendance with Tirthankar Paramatmas throughout their lives, particularly during their life when they become monks, and as soon as they establish a tirth, the devs are in attendance, and everywhere that the Tirthankar goes, they set up the Samvasaran. The Samvasaran that is set up is all due to the devs. It's part of their duty, but again, it all comes from the instructions from Indra. There is a hierarchy there, and the devs would come. But in a lot of the other instances, it is their choice. They may or may not come, and devs may also come down and help ordinary people like us, depending on what our connection, our attachment may be, and what our level of good fortune or our level of purity of our soul may be. So there are lots of examples, and even in modern times, there are examples, though we do not know of them very often, but I've heard of stories where there have been people who have been helped. But a lot of the time they will not come down because the place where we live is actually quite offensive to them, because it is extremely smelly and dirty compared with the kinds of abode that devs live in. And maybe at some stage in the future, we'll come to the discussion of what different kinds of devs are. There are devs, not all of them live above us. There are abodes of devs called Bhavanpati Dev. They are below us, very, very low below us. But those are things that we can talk about at some stage in the future. But to answer your question, no, it is by choice often. Sometimes their attraction is there because of the energy that comes along. They don't always know. And one of the other things that is described is that when that happens, they play the celestial instrument like the Shanai called Dundubi, which has got a very sweet sound. And that is also played at the time of when the Bhagwan is in Samvasaran. That accompanies the Bhagwan's Deshna as well. It's called Dev Dundubi. You may have seen pictures of what it looks like. It looks like a long beagle, or that's how it is depicted. I don't know exactly how it looks like, but it's depicted in the pictures as like a great long curved bugle. I hope that answers your question, Bijal.
Thank you. That's all the questions I think we had.
Okay.
So if you want to bring the session to an end, we can.
Yeah, I'll do that. Sorry, we've gone over as usual. And thank you all very much for joining today. We'll see you again next week when we'll explore the Ashrav Samvara and Nijara Bhavana in a bit more detail. Sarvamangalamangelyam Sarvakalyan Karanam Pradhanam Sarvadharmanam Jainam Jaiti Sasanam. Thank you.